This is in response to Billy's Talking Points memo from Monday, December 8th, 2014. Why grand juries always seem to side with the police, or something like that. Billy, this was one of your more egregious, one of your more repugnant, whatever you want to call it, talking point that I've heard. And I've only been monitoring you for a little while, but I mean, it wasn't Catholic. It wasn't moral. It was immoral. That's what I feel about your comments about it. The first thing you start off is to bring in Jesse Jackson and know how he feels. He even feels scared about blacks. Of course, that was 21 years ago. All right, but let's just take it as I said. What's your point right there from the beginning? Scary black man. Yep, you're scared of the black man. We all need to be scared because Jesse Jackson's scared. Yep, you said, but you had to go back 21 years to find it, And then you bring up how many black people are in prison. 36% of black people. Well, let's just go into a couple of things real quick. We know that if a white kid in suburbia gets caught with a little cocaine when they're 17 or 18, or 21, probation, PBJ, probation before judgment, the usual. What happens if a kid's 21 or has a college degree and gets caught with a little cocaine? They're in prison for years. Or crack, because remember, the laws for the years and years and years are much harsher for crack than they are for cocaine. So, you try and make things, again, be scared of the black man, because there's so many more black people in prison as a percentage of the population than white people are in prison. So you need to be scared of the black man, okay? But again, we're talking about targeting, we're talking about stop and frisk, we're talking about abuse. What was the hashtag? I got away with it the other day. All these white people. I mean, when I was a kid, I got some trouble. I'm not going to tell you yet, but I will sometime. All these white kids get away. If you're a black kid and you get in trouble, and there were other things that were out there where black people were talking about when they were children or when they were young adults. When they got in trouble, they got the shit kicked out of them, stuff like that. So you go into all of this stuff, and then you go into grand juries. So they already have. But basically, you're saying grand juries already have a bias against black children, black teenagers, black young adults when they go in and they're dealing with the police. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that they're impartial every single time they meet up. And you go, but they don't have to be, because, hey, it's a black kid that we're going to try and indict, And then you bring up statistics about assault, about how many police officers, are charged with assault, all I got to say is, I don't know how much it was, 5%, 10%, I can't remember how much it was. But again, a lot of these things, they throw in all kinds of charges, they pick up a drunk person and they fall into the cop, that's assault, or someone's resisting arrest a little bit and they get hit, it's assault. Not to hit, but they run into them. So, it's assault. So these are very, and I think you said charges. So were all of those charges brought to fruition? Were they all indicted on that? I don't really know, And then you go into blaming the black neighborhood. Look at the black neighborhood. It's loaded with drugs. It's loaded with guns. It's loaded with bad people. So the cops are really good people, and they are good people. And they have to go into these areas, and they don't know who they're dealing with all the time. And they have to go in every single area where they don't know what they're dealing with. Any time that they do, of course, there may be a little bit more of a perception. I would agree with that. If they're going into a black area, they have to respond to a call. That there might be a better chance that someone in that black area would have a firearm. But again. You're blaming the neighborhood, and it just isn't fair. And again, then you start blaming everything else. Why the poor family structure and all this other stuff. And all I want to do is I want to go back 150 years. There was slave labor, right? And then there's slave labor from the 1865 to 1965. In the sense is that laws were written to keep black people down. Red lines were drawn on maps so that black people couldn't live in certain areas. If black people could only get certain jobs, they couldn't get a federal job. They couldn't get a regular job. They had to work for the federal government in many instances. Because the federal, who would employ a black lawyer? What happened? These are things that have been going on for a long, long time, Billy. And the inner city is fraught with years and years and years of marginalization, of laws written to hurt them, of actually incredibly poor educational system for all of these people. And then you just say, oh, well, you know, they live in this black area, the family structure is down, the women are overburdened. Again, black man, bad person, doesn't take care of the family. This is what was causing all of this type of thing, you know. And then, of course, you go in and blame the mayor of New York City, you know. But I just want to get back, you know. I've seen pictures of what it was like in the 40s and 50s and 60s in the inner city, in a number of inner cities, you know, ghettos. That's why they called them ghettos, you know. And they didn't have an opportunity. They couldn't get real jobs. Good lawyers couldn't work for law firms, for good law firms. Doctors couldn't work at certain hospitals. Certain hospitals wouldn't accept blacks into the hospital themselves. That's why, remember I talked about before, that there are a number of people that are your age, Billy, 64, they were born in the South. They couldn't go to a hospital back then. They had to be born, they had midwives back then, you know. And so that's why some people don't have IDs. You know, that's the way it was back then, all right? And to say that things are going to change that much, because, hey, you know, remember after Brown versus Board of Education, when it said it was separate but unequal, and they said, you know, it has to be, if it's going to be separate, it's got to be equal. White flight went right to the suburbs, you know, and then all those suburbs, they got all the money for the educational system, and the blacks that had to stay in the inner city, they didn't get that type they didn't get good type of education. You know, so there's a whole host of things that have been going on for hundreds of years, you know, and you know, you're blaming the black person, scary black person. They're incarcerated a hell of a lot. They got a terrible family structure. What are you doing to help it? How about increasing money into the educational system so that they can learn? How about specialized schools to teach things, vocational schools where it's needed, where because a lot of black people can't get jobs from the inner city. There's no public transportation that get them to the outer suburbs where there might be some jobs for them. You know, how about increasing a better transportation system? How about well, there's a whole host of things. You know what they are. I can't think of all of them every single time. You know, how about increasing the minimum wage? How about educational things for black single mothers? How about the Employee Non-Discrimination Act? You know, how about equal work for equal pay for women? Because who is really suffering the most in terms of raising children in a black household where there is only one parent? Single black women. What about something for them? Would you be willing to pay more in taxes just so that it would help single black women so that they could get out of poverty and raise their children in an environment where they get decent food, they get decent clothing, and they get an adequate education? I would like to think so. I would pay more. I don't make a whole lot, but I would be willing to pay more. Would you be willing to pay more? Would other people be willing to pay for more? Instead of just bloviating, see, you're the one that wants to bloviate. You want to say it's the black people's problem. All they have to do is get their traditional family structure back in place, and then everything will be just hunky-dory, because there won't be red lines in terms of where they can live. There won't be there won't be discrimination in terms of how much they have to pay for a mortgage. There won't be discrimination when they go into a job, when they go into an employment thing. Oh, the other thing again, you know, you criticize blacks because they have their own separate lingo, let's just say, language or whatever you want to say, and they wear different clothes than us. You know, again, different, bad, different. You know, they don't talk like us. You know, don't ever come looking for a job here with me. You know, so. You know, there's a lot of things that you could do, Billy. You could advocate for the minimum wage, but I haven't seen you do that. You sort of said, I think that's probably a pretty good idea, but have you advocated for it? No, you haven't done anything about it. So you're the one that's bloviating about all this. And, you know, and here's the thing, and I'll end with this, is that grand juries aside, grand juries are supposed to be impartial. The ones that are not partial are you, Billy. Again, I find it incredibly repugnant, those comments that you made today. Comments that you made yesterday, and it again emphasizes to me is that you have no clue as to what it is like to be a black person in America.